You don't forget the moment your own family looks you in the eye and calls you a liar. It doesn't come with yelling, not at first. It comes with quiet disbelief, with smirks, with that sideways glance that says we know who you are, and it's not someone worth trusting. That night started like something out of a dream. A rooftop restaurant, string lights glowing against the skyline, soft jazz drifting in the air. My brother Mason was at the center of it all, celebrating his engagement to Brooke, the so-called angel my mother had already crowned the daughter she never had. Everyone was there, our parents, Brooke's family, friends, cousins, people who hadn't seen me in years but still managed to greet Mason like he was royalty. And me. I was the one who'd booked the reservation, paid the deposit, even ordered the floral arrangements because my mother insisted fake flowers would look cheap in photos. I showed up in a navy suit, carrying champagne, ready, foolishly, to believe this night might finally be one where I belonged. But when I walked in, Mason didn't smile. He didn't pull me in for a hug or offer a seat at the big table draped in white linen. Instead, with that familiar smug grin, he pointed to a fold-out chair shoved against the wall by a trash bin. "Sorry, man. Family only," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Laughter rippled around the table. My mother's lips tightened in that fake smile she uses when she refuses to step in. My father raised his glass, awkward and silent. Brooke didn't even glance at me. So I sat there, champagne bottle at my feet, coat still on. For 2 hours I watched them toast, laugh, unwrap gifts, and perform their perfect version of togetherness while I stayed invisible, like an unwanted extra in a family photo. And then, the check came. The waiter, holding that little leather folder, didn't take it to their table. He came to me. "Excuse me, sir. The total is $3,218. Should I use the card we have on file?" The room went still. All eyes turned to me. Mason leaned back in his chair, smirk tugging at his lips. "Oh, Eli's got it," he said casually, as if I were the hired help. My pulse thundered in my ears. My hands didn't shake, though. I smiled, calm, steady, and said loud enough for every single one of them to hear. "Not my table. I was told this was for family only." The silence that followed cracked like glass. The waiter froze, still clutching the check as if it were radioactive. My brother's grin faltered, the kind of expression that slips when a joke backfires. My mother's face darkened, flickering between confusion and irritation. Not at Mason, not at the humiliation I'd endured, but at me, for daring to disrupt her carefully staged evening. "Wait, Eli," she began, her voice low, shaky. "What are you doing?" I stood, sliding my chair back with deliberate slowness. My coat was already on. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The words cut sharper whispered than shouted. "Following the seating chart," I said. "Mason said this table was for family only. So I assumed I wasn't included." The waiter shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, you made the reservation. You paid the deposit." "I did." I nodded, my voice still calm. "But I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcome. So I won't be paying." The silence was a living thing now, pressing down on everyone. Even the jazz band's soft tune seemed to trail into an awkward hum. Mason's smirk twisted into something uglier. "Don't be ridiculous. It was a joke. You always take things so personally. Lighten up, man." I almost laughed, the same line I'd heard my entire life, every time I was mocked, dismissed, shoved aside. Sensitive. Overreacting. The scapegoat for their cruelty wrapped in humor. "Yeah," I said slowly, letting my gaze lock on his. "That's the problem. You think everything's a joke, as long as it's at someone else's expense. Brooke blinked, finally realizing this wasn't just banter. Her father, a stiff, unsmiling man in a pressed blazer, leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at Mason. His voice was low, incredulous. "You invited your brother to your engagement dinner and sat him by the trash can?" The question hung heavy, an accusation more damning than anything I could have said. Mason scoffed, shifting in his seat, and looked to our mother for backup. As always, she was ready. Her tight smile reappeared, brittle as glass. "Let's not blow things out of proportion," she said quickly. "Eli is just being dramatic. He's always been sensitive." And there it was. The excuse that had silenced me for years. The lie that turned my pain into my fault. But not this time. I reached for my coat pocket, and my fingers brushed against something I had brought with me. Something I hadn't planned to use, but suddenly knew I would. The photo. The one piece of proof that would finally show them who they really were. I pulled the folded envelope from my coat pocket and held it between two fingers, not rushing, not explaining. Just the sight of it drew every eye at the table. "What's that?" Mason asked, trying to sound dismissive, but his voice cracked just slightly. I let the silence stretch before answering. "Proof," I said. I slid the photo free and placed it flat on the waiter's tray so everyone could see. It wasn't just any picture, it was one I'd taken at the start of the night, before anyone else had arrived. The empty room, the private section set for 20, the elegant centerpiece, the linen tablecloths, and in the corner, one lone folding chair shoved by the trash bin, already waiting for me. The gasp came not from my family, but from Brooke's side of the table. Her father leaned closer, eyes narrowing, his voice sharp as a knife. "So you planned this," he said to Mason. "You intentionally set your own brother apart like garbage?" Mason's face flushed deep red. "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I cut in, my voice steady. "You thought you could laugh it off, make me the butt of the joke again. But this time, I came prepared." My mother tried to interject, her voice sharp with panic. "Eli, put that away. You're making a scene." But the photo was already making its own scene, louder than words. Every detail was there, undeniable. The cruel intention laid bare. Brooke's mother whispered something to her husband, her face pale with disgust. Brooke herself finally looked at me, really looked at me, and her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Across the table, Mason shifted in his seat, anger and embarrassment twisting his features. He jabbed a finger at me. "You're pathetic, man. You brought a camera just to play victim? That's sick." I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "No, Mason. What's sick is spending 30 years making your brother feel like a stranger in his own family, and still thinking you can get away with it." The waiter cleared his throat awkwardly, the bill still in his hand. But nobody was looking at him anymore. Every eye was fixed on me, the brother who finally stopped shrinking. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The room cracked open like a dropped glass. Brooke's father sat back in his chair, his jaw tight, eyes locked on Mason like he was seeing him for the first time. "Is this how you treat people?" he asked, voice low, dangerous. "This is the man you grew up with? Your own brother?" Mason's smirk was gone, replaced by a flush creeping up his neck. He tried to laugh it off. "Come on, it's not that serious. It was a joke." But no one was laughing anymore. Brooke's mother shook her head, disgust plain on her face. "A joke? This isn't a joke, Mason. This is cruel." Even Brooke herself, usually glued to Mason's side, looked uneasy. She reached for his arm but hesitated, as if she didn't want to be seen touching him. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. "Mason, why would you do that?" My mother jumped in, desperate to regain control. "Enough. Eli's twisting things, like he always does. He exaggerates, he makes himself the victim." I turned to her, cutting her off with a look I'd never dared give before. "No, Mom. Not this time. I didn't twist anything. That picture was taken before anyone arrived. Before Mason even said a word. That chair was waiting for me. Just like it always has." The words hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened, then closed again, but no defense came. Brooke's father leaned toward Mason, his tone sharp as steel. "You think you're ready to marry my daughter, but you can't even show basic respect to your own brother? If this is how you treat family, how do you treat strangers?" Mason shifted, his eyes darting between me and his future in-laws. For once, his charm had nothing to stand on. He muttered, "It wasn't supposed to. It wasn't supposed to get this far." And then, from the far end of the table, Brooke's younger brother let out a short, bitter laugh. Guess the golden boy act finally cracked. The tension snapped tighter. Mason stood suddenly, the chair screeching against the floor. He jabbed a finger at me again, his voice louder now, desperate. "You've always been jealous of me. That's what this is. You can't stand that people like me more." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No," I said simply. "I can't stand that people believe you. Until now." And I tapped the photo with my finger, the proof that even Mason couldn't laugh away. The silence that followed wasn't just heavy, it was damning. Mason's face twisted, his smugness cracking into raw anger. "You think one stupid picture proves anything? You've been bitter your whole life, Eli. Always whining, always playing the victim. Maybe if you weren't so boring, people would actually want you around." His words hit the table like knives, but instead of slicing me down, they cut through his own mask. Brooke flinched. Her father's jaw tightened further. The waiter still stood frozen with the bill, as if afraid to move. I stayed calm. "Boring, huh?" I gestured toward the table, the glittering glasses, the centerpieces I had ordered. "Who made this night possible, Mason? Who booked the place, paid the deposit, arranged the flowers because Mom said plastic would look tacky?" "It wasn't you. But I guess boring people get things done." For the first time, Mason didn't have a comeback. His mouth opened, but no words came. Then, from behind him, Brooke spoke softly but firmly. "Mason, is that true?" He spun toward her. "Babe, don't listen to him. He's twisting it." But she pulled her arm away before he could reach her. Her voice shook, but the words were steady. "I don't think he is." The table buzzed with whispers. Brooke's parents exchanged a look, the kind of look that said this marriage isn't as certain as it was an hour ago. My mother, desperate to salvage the evening, leaned forward, her tone sharp and defensive. "Eli, enough. You're embarrassing yourself. Mason's engagement is supposed to be a happy occasion." I turned to her, and for once, I didn't let her words shrink me. "No, Mom. I'm not embarrassing myself. I'm embarrassing you, by finally refusing to play the part you wrote for me. The quiet, invisible one who pays and stays silent." The tension snapped again, louder this time. Brooke's younger brother let out another laugh, short and cruel, like he'd been waiting years to see Mason knocked down. Guess this dinner turned out to be memorable after all. Mason's fist slammed against the table, rattling glasses. "Shut up," he barked, his mask completely gone. The entire room froze. Guests who had been laughing an hour ago now stared at him like he was a stranger. And for the first time in his life, Mason realized the crowd wasn't on his side. Mason stood there, chest heaving, his knuckles white against the tablecloth. For years he had thrived on charm, on that crooked smile that could get him out of anything. But tonight, the mask was gone, and without it, he just looked small. Brooke's father's voice sliced through the silence. "Sit down, Mason." But Mason didn't sit. He pointed across the room at me, his voice rising. "You think you've won, Eli? You think you're some kind of hero because you finally grew a spine? You'll always be nothing. You'll always be the extra. That picture doesn't change who you are." I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't shout back. Instead, I reached for the champagne bottle I'd brought, the one still resting on the floor beside my lonely chair. I held it up for everyone to see, the gold foil glinting under the lights. "I brought this to celebrate you, Mason," I said evenly. Because despite everything, I wanted to believe maybe tonight would be different. That maybe I'd finally be seen as part of this family. But all I got was a folding chair by the trash. I set the bottle gently on the table, right in front of him. "So here's your celebration. You can toast to the person you really are, now that everyone else finally sees it too." A ripple went through the guests. Some exchanged looks of pity, others of disbelief. But no one was laughing anymore. Brooke stared at the bottle, then at Mason, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't even recognize you right now." That was the crack that broke him. Mason slammed his chair backward, the legs screeching against the floor. His face was twisted with rage, but underneath I saw it. Fear. For the first time, he was losing control, and he knew it. "Fine," he snapped, his voice echoing across the rooftop. "If you all want to worship Saint Eli, go ahead. Don't come crying to me when he shows you who he really is." He stormed past me, his shoulder slamming mine hard enough to sting. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just watched him push through the doors and disappear into the night. The silence he left behind was deafening. Then Brooke's father spoke, his voice cold and final. "This dinner is over." Chairs scraped back, murmurs rose, and the carefully staged evening collapsed in on itself like a house of cards. My mother tried to gather her things quickly, her face tight with fury and shame. My father avoided my eyes completely. But Brooke didn't move. She just sat there, staring at the photo still on the table. The rooftop was emptying fast, chairs scraping, footsteps clattering toward the elevator, a buzz of whispers trailing behind Mason's exit. But my parents stayed seated, stiff and silent. Brooke lingered too, her eyes fixed on the photo in front of her like it was a mirror she didn't want to face. I slipped my coat on fully, ready to walk out. Then my father finally spoke, his voice rough, almost pleading. "Eli, come on. You already paid for half. You might as well just finish it." The words hit harder than any insult Mason had thrown. I turned slowly, my heart pounding, my voice low but sharp. "You're right, Dad. I did pay the deposit. I booked the restaurant, ordered the flowers, even picked the date around Mason's football schedule. I did everything to make tonight possible. And what did I get in return? A folding chair by the trash." My father's jaw worked, but he had no answer. My mother finally snapped, her tone sharp, brittle. "Stop being so dramatic, Eli. You always turn little things into tragedies. Why can't you just let it go?" I stepped closer, close enough to see her grip tightening around her glass. "Because it's not little. It's my entire life. 34 years of being told to sit quietly, pay quietly, exist quietly, while Mason got to be the golden child no matter how badly he screwed up. And you defended him. Every time. Her eyes flashed, but there was something else there too. Guilt, maybe, or fear. We did our best, she hissed. You've always been so serious. You never made it easy to love you. The words landed like a knife. For a second, I almost faltered. Almost. But then I remembered the photo, the laughter, the folding chair. And something inside me hardened. No, Mom, I said softly. You never even tried. The air between us went still. Brooke shifted in her seat, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly against the edge of the table. Her voice came out quiet but clear. Eli's right. Both my parents turned toward her, shocked. Brooke swallowed hard, her eyes still on the photo. If Mason thinks this is a joke, if you think this is a joke, then I don't know what kind of family I'm marrying into. Her father stepped closer to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. His glare at my parents said everything he didn't. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on trial. The city skyline glowed behind us, but the rooftop felt colder than ever. My parents sat stiff, their faces locked in that brittle silence they wore whenever they refused to admit fault. Brooke sat frozen between them and her own parents, the photo still on the table like a piece of evidence no one could sweep away. Finally, Brooke spoke, her voice trembling. Mason planned this. Didn't he? My mother stiffened, ready to deny it. But she hesitated, and that tiny pause was louder than any confession. Brooke's face went pale. She pushed her chair back slowly, almost like she was afraid of what her own body might do if she moved too fast. I can't marry someone who treats people like that, she whispered. Not when it's his own brother. Not when you, she looked at my parents now, just sat there and let it happen. Her father gave a sharp nod, proud but grim. You don't build a marriage on cruelty. My mother shot me a glare so venomous it could have cut steel. Are you happy now, Eli? You've ruined your brother's engagement. You've humiliated this family. I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. Instead, I reached for the photo, slid it back into my pocket, and said calmly, No, Mom. Mason ruined it himself. I just stopped covering for him. For a long moment, the only sound was the soft clink of cutlery being cleared from abandoned plates. My father tried one last time, his voice almost a whisper. You're still our son. Don't walk away like this. I met his eyes, steady, unblinking. I've been walking away for years, Dad. You just never noticed. I turned and started toward the elevator. My footsteps were slow, deliberate. Nobody stopped me this time. Behind me, I heard Brooke's chair scrape back, then her voice, quiet, steady, final. I'm not going home with Mason tonight. The ripple that followed those words told me everything. The golden child's crown had finally slipped. And I was done carrying the weight of it. The elevator doors slid shut behind me, cutting off the rooftop and all the voices I'd grown up drowning in. For the first time in years, there was silence. Not the suffocating kind that makes you feel small, but the kind that feels like air after being underwater too long. I walked down the block, loosened my tie, and let the night air burn the heat from my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I'd even made it halfway to my car. Dad, come back. Let's talk. Mom, you've embarrassed us enough. Don't make this worse. Mason, you smug little loser. You think you won? Enjoy your pity party. Nobody cares about you. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then I slid the phone back into my pocket without replying. They wanted me to crawl back, to play my part, to smooth it over like always. But the photo had already spoken. For once, the truth wasn't just mine, it was undeniable. By the time I reached the garage, another message came through, this time from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then opened it. "Brooke, I'm sorry. For everything. You didn't deserve that." I stopped walking. The words felt heavier than they should have, like a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying was suddenly gone. For years, I'd been told I was overreacting, too sensitive, too dramatic. But one photo had done what all my words never could, it forced them to see. I leaned against my car, staring at the city lights glittering in the distance, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about how to earn a place at their table. I was thinking about building one of my own. I drove for hours that night with no destination in mind, just the hum of the road and the steady rhythm of my thoughts. The city lights faded in the rearview mirror, and with them, the weight of years I hadn't realized I was still carrying. I thought about every holiday where my chair was at the edge of the room, every joke about me being too serious, every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. I had told myself that was love, that family meant enduring. But family isn't supposed to feel like exile in your own home. When I finally pulled over at a quiet overlook, I sat in the stillness, phone buzzing again with calls I didn't answer. I pulled the photo from my pocket, the edges now warm from being held so tight, and I looked at it one last time. A chair by the trash. That was all it was. But it was also everything. Proof that I hadn't imagined the way they treated me. Proof that I wasn't crazy, or dramatic, or oversensitive. Proof that my place in their story had always been written in the margins. And now, I was done reading their script. I slid the photo back into its envelope and tucked it away, not as a wound, but as a reminder. A reminder of the night I stopped begging to be seen and started choosing myself. Because the truth is, sometimes family doesn't break you with violence. They break you with absence, with the quiet cruelty of pretending you don't belong. And the only way to heal is to walk away, even if your footsteps echo alone at first. That night, I promised myself something simple. I would never again sit at a table where I wasn't wanted. I'd build my own table, even if it took years, even if it only ever had one chair. And if anyone ever dared to call me a liar again, I'd smile and let the truth speak for itself. Because I've learned, one photo is all it takes to change everything.